the Sicilian Mafia. A name whispered in hushed tones, shrouded in mystery and fear. It evokes images of clandestine meetings, ruthless violence, and an unyielding grip on power. For centuries, the Mafia has cast a long shadow over the sun-drenched island of Sicily, its tendrils reaching into every corner of society. This secret society, with its strict code of silence and brutal enforcement, has been the subject of countless books, films, and investigations. Yet despite the efforts to penetrate its veil of secrecy, the Mafia remains an enigma. Its true nature, its inner workings, and the extent of its power continue to fascinate and horrify. The Mafia's influence extends far beyond the shores of Sicily. Its tentacles have spread across continents, infiltrating governments, businesses, and everyday life. Its legacy is one of violence, corruption, and a pervasive fear that silences even the bravest. To understand the Mafia, one must delve into its origins, its evolution, and the rise of its most notorious figures. Only then can we begin to grasp the true nature of this enduring criminal enterprise. The roots of the Sicilian Mafia can be traced back to the turbulent history of the island. Centuries of foreign rule and weak central authority created fertile ground for organized crime. In the 19th century, the Mafia emerged from the shadows. They were bands of armed men, exploiting the chaos. They offered protection to landowners and merchants. Those who refused to pay faced brutal retribution. The Mafia infiltrated local governments and law enforcement. They rigged elections and silenced opposition. By the early 20th century, the Mafia's grip on Sicilian society tightened. The organization was structured around families, or cosche. At the head of each cosca was a powerful boss. These bosses formed a loose confederation known as Cosa Nostra. Among the ranks of Cosa Nostra, certain figures rose to prominence, their names whispered in hushed tones, their deeds shrouded in a mix of legend and fear. These were the Godfathers, men who commanded not only respect but also instilled a chilling dread in their rivals and those under their rule. Their origins were often murky, their pasts veiled in secrecy and speculation. Some were born into Mafia families, inheriting their power and influence. Others clawed their way to the top through cunning, ruthlessness, and a willingness to shed blood to achieve their goals. Regardless of their path, these Godfathers shared certain traits: an iron will, a strategic mind, and an aura of invincibility that made them seem larger than life. They understood the levers of power and how to manipulate them to their advantage. The Godfather's word was law, his decisions unquestioned. He was the ultimate arbiter of disputes, the dispenser of justice, and the architect of the family's fortunes. His reign, however, was often marked by violence, as rivals challenged his authority and law enforcement agencies sought to bring him down. Combating the Mafia was a perilous and often frustrating endeavor. The organization's code of silence, known as Omertà, made witnesses difficult to find and even harder to turn. Those who dared to speak out against the Mafia often met with swift and brutal retribution. Law enforcement agencies faced an uphill battle. The Mafia's deep roots in Sicilian society, coupled with its influence over politicians and law enforcement officials, made investigations difficult and prosecutions even more challenging. Adding to the complexity was the Mafia's ability to adapt and evolve. As law enforcement agencies developed new tactics, the Mafia would counter with their own strategies, exploiting loopholes and finding new ways to operate in the shadows. Despite these challenges, dedicated investigators persisted, risking their lives to bring Mafia leaders to justice. They understood that dismantling the organization required not only arrests and convictions, but also a dismantling of the culture of fear and silence that allowed the Mafia to thrive. Section 5, the Godfather's strategies, a calculated rise to power. The Godfather's rise to power was rarely a result of brute force alone. It was a calculated ascent, a strategic masterpiece built on a foundation of cunning, diplomacy, and a deep understanding of human nature. He was a master manipulator, able to exploit weaknesses and forge alliances to achieve his goals. One of the Godfather's key strategies was to cultivate an image of respectability. He understood the importance of public perception and went to great lengths to present himself as a man of honor, a benefactor to his community. He would often involve himself in legitimate businesses, using them as fronts for his illegal activities and as a way to launder money. This provided him with a veneer of legitimacy, making it more difficult for law enforcement to connect him to criminal enterprises. The Godfather also understood the importance of building a loyal network of supporters. He surrounded himself with capable lieutenants, men who were both ruthless and fiercely loyal. He rewarded them generously, ensuring their silence and their unwavering dedication to his cause. Section 6. A moment of reckoning. The Godfather's masterstroke. Every Godfather's reign was marked by a pivotal moment, a defining event that solidified his power. It might have been a daring act of violence or a cunning maneuver. One such Godfather orchestrated a plan that would become legendary. He had been consolidating his power, eliminating rivals, and expanding his territory. However, one powerful family remained a thorn in his side. The Godfather knew that a direct confrontation would be costly. Instead, he devised a plan to strike at the heart of his enemy's operations. He infiltrated the gathering with his most trusted men. As the festivities peaked, his men struck, decimating the rival family. The Godfather's message was clear: defiance would not be tolerated. Justice and its limits. Despite the Mafia's reign of terror, law enforcement was not powerless. Prosecutors and investigators risked their lives to dismantle the organization. They targeted the heads of the Hydra, not just foot soldiers. One prosecutor dedicated his career to dismantling the Mafia's power. He built cases using informants, wiretaps, and investigations. His efforts led to a landmark trial, shocking the criminal underworld. A Godfather was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. It was a major victory, but came at a heavy price. Section 8. The Godfather's grip, influence, and domination. The Godfather's influence extended far beyond the criminal underworld. He understood that true power lay in controlling the levers of society and infiltrating the institutions that governed everyday life. He used his wealth and influence to corrupt politicians, judges, and law enforcement officials, ensuring that his interests were always protected. Businesses, both large and small, were often forced to pay pizzo, a protection racket that lined the Mafia's coffers and instilled fear in the hearts of entrepreneurs. Those who refused were met with threats, intimidation, and in some cases, violence. The Godfather's grip on society was so pervasive that it affected even the most mundane aspects of life. He controlled unions, influencing labor disputes and dictating who could work and who couldn't. He infiltrated construction projects, skimming profits and ensuring that contracts went to companies under his control. This stranglehold on society created a climate of fear and resignation. People were afraid to speak out against the Mafia, fearing for their safety and the well-being of their families. The Godfather's power seemed absolute, his reach limitless. Section 9. The price of power, the Godfather's inner circle. Life within the Godfather's inner circle was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it offered wealth, power, and a sense of belonging that few could resist. The Godfather's favor could elevate a man from obscurity to a position of prominence, granting him access to the finer things in life. However, this proximity to power came at a steep price. Loyalty to the Godfather was absolute, any transgression punishable by death. Those who betrayed the family or dared to challenge the Godfather's authority were swiftly and brutally dealt with. The constant threat of violence, the paranoia, and the pressure of living a double life took a toll on even the most hardened individuals. Many turned to alcohol, drugs, or gambling to cope with the stress, their lives spiraling out of control. The Godfather himself was not immune to the corrosive effects of power. The constant need to protect his position, to eliminate rivals, and to maintain control often turned him into a prisoner of his own making, isolated and distrustful of even his closest confidants. Section 10. The Godfather's enduring legacy. A criminal dynasty, the Godfather's reign, though finite, cast a long shadow that extended far beyond his lifetime. His influence continued to shape the criminal underworld, his name whispered in hushed tones by those who sought to emulate his cunning and ruthlessness. The organization he built, the networks of power he established, and the culture of fear he cultivated all endured, passed down from one generation of mafiosi to the next. The Godfather's legacy was a double-edged sword, a testament to his strategic brilliance and a stark reminder of the corrosive effects of organized crime. Law enforcement agencies continued to chip away at the mafia's power, but the organization proved to be remarkably resilient, adapting to changing circumstances and exploiting new opportunities. The battle against organized crime was a marathon, not a sprint, requiring vigilance, determination, and a willingness to confront the root causes that allowed such criminal enterprises to flourish. Section 11. Unmasking the Myths, a call to explore the underworld. The Godfather is a cautionary tale showing that power and wealth through illegal means come at a heavy price. It exposes the dark underbelly of society and the human capacity for both good and evil. The mafia's story, with all its complexities, is far from over. It continues to unfold in courtrooms, streets, and shadows. This story demands to be told to understand the forces shaping our world and the battle against organized crime.